Trump says they're bringing crime, bringing drugs, they're rapists across the border into America. Let's assume this is racist, okay? So how do we know if we're correct? Well, it's a great test we can use, you probably have heard of it before, to decide if we're accurate or not. It's called the shoe on the other foot test. In this situation, we just reverse the roles of everybody in the scenario. So instead of Trump saying these things about Mexico, we have the Mexican nominee for president of Mexico saying these things about America. I'm American, I can decide if it's racist or not. So the Mexican nominee says, America is dumping people across the border into Mexico. And these people are bringing with them crime, drugs, they're rapists, and some, he assumes, are good people. The question is, do I feel it's racist what the Mexican nominee for president is saying? No, not at all. Do I feel it's offensive what he's saying? I don't even feel he's offensive. I don't feel it's offensive at all. You might wonder why he thinks that America is dumping these criminals across the border, but I wouldn't feel it's racist or offensive. Hard rule of thumb, every racist comment has to be offensive. It must offend everybody in the race. Okay, Trump says they're bringing crime, bringing drugs, they're rapists, and he assumes some are good people. What do you think of that? I assume some are good people comment. I think it's very unusual for a racist to say this. Very unusual. Pretend you're at a rally for the Nation of Islam. Louis Farrakhan is the leader, and he's a well-known racist. He's called white people white devils or potential humans, things like that. Would he say some are good people? I don't think he'd say that. I don't think his audience would want to hear that either. There's a video on YouTube where an audience member asks Farrakhan, it's an old video, but asks him, are there any white people that are good? He says, of course there are, but I'm not looking for them. Then he goes on to say they're basically a needle in a haystack, almost none, that kind of thing. I think saying some are good people kind of lessens any racism towards Mexico. But if you feel differently, let me know in the commentary section below, of course. Is Trump using a racist stereotype here? The Mexican rapist? I read that online. I never heard of that before. And I lived in Colombia and I speak decent Spanish. I've heard of Mexicans with sombrero wearing stereotype, the tequila drinking stereotype, and the luchador, those fighters who go in the ring and they wear the masks and the capes. I'm not sure how offensive these stereotypes are, but Mexican rapist? I haven't heard of that one. Then I read the article online where the guy was explaining, guy or woman was explaining that because African Americans were called sexual predators 80, 90, 100 years ago, that the Mexicans can borrow that stereotype because they're also people of color, and therefore it's a stereotype against Mexicans. And I thought, this is a little silly. Countries can't borrow stereotypes. If you called an African American a sombrero-wearing tequila drinker or whatever, they would think you're crazy. They wouldn't understand what you're talking about. Likewise, a stereotype against a Venezuelan does not apply to a stereotype against a Saudi Arabian. It wouldn't be similar, even though they're both people of color, perhaps. Can't really borrow stereotypes. The point is, if you really want to find racism, a smart writer can, of course, think of some kind of reason. Perhaps, as some have said, Trump is using a racist dog whistle. You know what that is. Dog whistles are whistles you blow, and they're very high frequency. Only dogs can hear it, not humans. In this case, the racial dog whistle, only a racist can hear it or understand it. So what do I think of that? It's a postmodernist concept. And if only the racist can understand it, how do we know what it is unless we're racist? It's a little bit silly. It makes almost anything in life could be racist in that case. A bed or ice cream flavor or your favorite sport. It really, in my opinion, is silly. It's too overbroad. If you feel different, please let me know in the comment section below. Let's hear more from Trump. See you back here in a few seconds.
But I speak to border guards, and they tell us what we're getting. And it only makes common sense. It only makes common sense. They're sending us not the right people. It's coming from more than Mexico. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming probably probably from the Middle East. But we don't know because we have no protection and we have no competence. We don't know what's happening. And it's got to stop. And it's got to stop fast.
Okay, Trump says they're sending people with lots of problems. He's still using lots of problems instead of saying bad people or criminals. He says they're coming not just from Mexico, but from South and Latin America. That really broadens the scope. And it's hard to argue that it's so racist against Mexico only when he's mentioning so many other countries. Of course, it could be racist against Latinos. Then he mentions, though, probably coming from the Middle East as well. Now that's a lot of countries, and now he's broadening it to people from the Middle East. I think this part of the speech also lessens the possibility of Mexican racism here when you're adding all of these countries and different areas of the world. Trump did tell us why he believes what he believes. The border guards are telling him this. He's not making it up, but he's not explaining why Mexico is doing this behavior. He does explain it, though, in a book he wrote that came out a few months later. The book is called Crippled America, How to Make America Great Again. And let's listen to a little bit of it, and Trump will explain why this is happening.
Too many people have forgotten the Mariel boat lift. In 1980, Fidel Castro told the Cuban people that anyone who wanted to leave Cuba was free to do so. President Carter opened our borders to anyone who came here. Except Castro was too smart for him. He emptied Cuba's prisons and insane asylums and sent his biggest problems here. He got rid of the worst people in that country.
Please join me in part 4 of this video. The link is in the description of this video below.